Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and inside this game review and gameplay video, I am excited to be checking out The Hobbit There and Back Again. This comes from Office Dog, and it is an adventure game where you're going to be drafting dice to make pathways, collecting resources, and performing actions that are going to help reach the goal of the chapter. For those unfamiliar with the game, it'll take you through 8 of the most iconic challenges faced by Bilbo and the dwarves in The Hobbit, such as overcoming trolls, goblins, wargs, and giant spiders, reclaiming the treasure of the dwarves, and defeating the dragon Smaug. In the end, you'll be completing a rewarding journey to the Lonely Mountain. On page 29 of the rulebook, you'll find the solo mode rules, and this is exactly what we'll be focusing on inside this video as we go on a solo play together. In order to play solo, you only need one additional component. This right here will be keeping track of the rounds. The round tracker is found on page 30 of the rulebook, and you'll see there's differences in terms of how the rounds are going to operate throughout the 8 different parts of the game. We'll go ahead and place a token in round number 1. Part number 1, The Unexpected Journey. Bilbo's quiet evening is upended by dwarves one after another, filling his home with song, plans, and mischief. They propose a perilous adventure to retrieve the stolen treasure guarded by the dragon Smaug. But will the reluctant hobbit agree to go? Now, within the rulebook, each of the parts is broken into a 2-page spread where you'll find specific rules for that part. So for the unexpected party, we have the objective here saying to connect the guests to Bag End and feed them upon their arrival. Make sure to gather swords to prepare for dangers ahead. We'll talk about this in just a moment. Components are going to be used is 5 white journey dice, sword tokens. Note that the bread tokens and the black 12-sided die are not used in this adventure, so we're going to remove those components from play right now. As we'll be rolling dice and resolving the dice, we'll be drawing pass. And so there's a note here around how pass can begin. Start pass from any of the guests, including Gandalf, Thorin, or any of the 12 dwarves. Continue the pass until they're connected to Bag End. You'll see an example of how this actually works on the right-hand side, but I'll show you this when we actually get into gameplay. The end of the venture states that it's going to end immediately when a player, or in my case just myself, is going to connect all 12 dwarves except Thorin to Bag End. Thorin and Gandalf have no impact on the adventure end. You'll see Bag End highlighted in red at the very bottom here. A number of resource tokens, bread, that we can pick up along the way. We'll talk about that. There's 12 dwarves all around the game board with their outlines around them. You'll also see Thorin up here in the top left, Gandalf in the top right, and you'll see some sword icons as well as some wizard hats. So our overall objective is to create lines connecting the dwarves back to Bag End, but when we do that, the second they are connected to Bag End, they're going to need to eat. So we need to ensure we actually have food ready for them to score the most points. We can have them come back to Bag End connected and not have the bread ready, but then we're losing out on points. Now, every one of the 8 iconic scenarios in this book are going to have unique twists and turns in terms of what you need to accomplish and do, and you'll find information inside the rulebook for each of them, plus what's going on here in terms of tracking in the actual adventure book. So you'll see in this case, we've got dwarves across the top of this track, and we've got bread across the bottom. There's lines dividing additional objectives we can go after in order to gain additional points, interacting with Thorin and Gandalf. Again, with these different dwarves being connected back to Bag End, as we do this, we're going to want to make sure that once we connect a dwarf by Xing it off, we not only gain the points below, but if we have the bread already, then we gain the point below that. Otherwise, we miss out on that bonus point. So that'll be tracked across here, left to right, and you'll see increases in how much points you get across the row as you go along in some cases, or various point values across the row. And then you'll see point values for how many swords we collect over the course of the game. So if we happen to have between 1 and 4 swords, that'll be 5 points, and so on. Now, as you can see on Thorin up there in the top left-hand corner, he's got a 2 inside of a yellow emblem, and that is glory points. Those are tracked when you gain them right here. You can go ahead and get glory in this scenario by connecting Gandalf and or Thorin back to Bag End. Those ones are a bit tougher. They're up in the top and left-hand corners of the map. Now, down here in the bottom left-hand corner, you have a number of wizard hats. So as you gain those, and you saw them on the map, they're on the right-hand side. As you cash them in, you can cash them in for connecting pieces that might be worthwhile, or maybe even resources like bread or swords. There's a bunch of handy information above the map. You can see, for example, preparing bread. When you gain bread, you mark the leftmost bread, as I mentioned, under a dwarf on the track, or you can actually mark it under Thorin or Gandalf, again, trying to prepare for their arrival, because if you connect them back to Bag End, not only do you get the points underneath them, but if they have the food already, you also gain additional points on top of it. Now in this scenario, you can see for glory points, it says the first to connect Gandalf or Thorin to bag end scores points. All of the players fill in the glory symbol, meaning they cannot gain the glory from that. But when you're playing solo, what will happen is during the round movement from round 1 to 2 to 3, certain rounds are going to tell us to mark off a glory element of gameplay, which means we are going to lose the opportunity to gain those points as time goes along. That is almost representative of a player taking it before you get a chance to get it yourself. The specific rules for this scenario really focus on preparing the food necessary for the individuals arriving in Bag End, as well as talking about how to actually track them across the different trackers when they arrive at Bag End. But we'll see this in action when I actually play solo here with you in just a moment. And it also talks about connecting paths, and also talks about gathering swords. And gathering swords is going to be something that'll generate us points as well. There's also scoring and how that works, but we'll leave that towards the end of this video. When playing the game solo, you'll follow the multiplayer rules with 2 exceptions. The first is how you take the dice each round, and the second is the endgame condition. And the endgame condition is tied to that round track I showed you earlier, where each scenario has its own round track using the solo round marker, which is going to denote which round you're on, and that's going to have effects specific to that scenario occurring, and also give you a new endgame condition in terms of the rounds running out. Now at the bottom of the page, you'll find more information specifically for the endgame condition, and it mentions there in that middle section, when the adventure ends, you score the game as usual, except you gain an additional 20 points if you were able to complete the endgame condition. In other words, you didn't run out of rounds from that round tracker that you're using your token for to keep track of. Now, if you want an extra challenge, you can apply the hard mode on top of it, and if you complete the game within the rounds designated in the solo mode, in other words, you don't run out of rounds, you gain 50 points instead of 20. So now as we take a second look at the round tracker sheet, you start to see the differences between the different parts in terms of the number of rounds. They start to increase in part number 5, decrease even in part 6. They fluctuate, and even the last one here has 13 rounds as a round limit, and you'll also start to see a 12-sided die enter the equation and specific rules around certain things that will happen inside of these given rounds. But for us right now, we only have to worry about this section right here. We have an 8-round limit to make this happen. So we now know our major objective, which is to get all 12 of the dwarves to Bag End before 8 rounds runs out. Let's roll the dice, and we'll talk through how the solo mode resolves the dice once we see the results. When you roll the dice in solo mode, you're going to break things up into 3 separate groups, and you're going to take a look at the dice you've rolled based on their position physically, looking at the far left-hand side first, and putting 2 dice in a group from the far left-hand side, and then from the right-hand side, and then leaving the middle die alone. So essentially, we'll start with this die, which is furthest to the left. It's going to sit over here. Looking at these 2 dice from your angle looks pretty close, but when I look at it straight on, this one's actually got its edge pointing further left than this die over here, so this will end up in this grouping, and these 2 will end up in the right grouping, and this one will be in the center. Now what you're going to do with the 5 dice broken into 3 different groups is you're going to take a single die from each of the groups. So you're going to have an option here on the left to choose between this one or this one. This one you're going to have to take as is, and this one you'll have a choice over here. Once you have the 3 dice, you can resolve them in any order you want. So I decided to hold on to these 3 dice from the 3 different groups. Now, because I can resolve these dice in any order I choose, it's a good idea to take a look at what the wizard hat could give me as a single icon. I could cash it in for any of the 4 across the top, immediately getting that path. Or I could actually just use the one wizard hat to start working towards one of the bigger ones across the bottom. Now, strategically, there's something else to be aware of in solo mode. You've got these glory points, as I talked about before, one for Gandalf here for connecting him to Bag End, and one for Thorin. There's only 2, but what's going to end up happening essentially is these are going to be taken away from us at the start of specific rounds as we go through the round tracker. So when we hit round 3, we lose one of them. When we hit round 5, we lose the other one, and then eventually there won't be any glory points to obtain at all because they've already been taken. So if we want to go after those early, we're going to have to work towards them because they will disappear quite quickly. Some of the dice results you're going to get are going to show a path going through 2 spaces, or sometimes even a path just in a single space, but that's important to note as you draw your path on the board. Also worth mentioning, you can rotate your result in any way you choose. You can also mirror it. So for example, if you had something like this, instead of drawing it like an L, you could actually reverse it so the bottom portion is pointing off to the left. So keep in mind, if you rotate the die or mirror the die, it's going to give you additional strategic options. I'm going to choose to use my first die here to draw a path connecting these two dwarves together. And it's worth mentioning that when you're connecting to these outer edges of the box of the dwarves. You cannot go through them, but of course in these open spaces, you go through them as you draw the path. Now, to be even clear around drawing paths, you can draw a path by connecting to a start space, as we know for this scenario, that's any of the dwarves, Gandalf or Thorin, or if it's touching one of your previously drawn paths, or if it's crossing one of your previously drawn paths, but you always must draw the full shape of the path shown on the die when you use it. The next path I'm going to draw is coming from Thorin straight down, and you'll see I've crossed through a resource. The second you do this, you're going to go ahead and gain it, and for this scenario, that's going to eventually get us some points. Actually, just having one by itself gets us into the first section here from 1 to 4, which gains us 5 points. If I can get 5 of these swords, we move up to the next tier, which is 10 points. Now I've got that wizard hat remaining, and I would love to get Thorin tied into one of the dwarves as we try and pull them back to Bag End. So maybe we'll go for one of these 90-degree pieces right here. We'll spend this die to take the leftmost one right here. So we mark we can no longer take that, and we're going to take that 90-degree piece. Again, we can rotate it or mirror it as we wish. And I chose to rotate it and connect it to an existing path, which now connects Thorin to this dwarf and also cross through a sword space. So we gain another sword. That's 2. That's going to do it for round number 1. We've used all 3 of our dice. We now move on to round number 2, and there's no effect that's going to be triggering right now, but you'll see when we get to the start of round number 3, as I mentioned, we're losing one area where glory could be gained. Let's see how the dice treat us this time around, and we'll go ahead and pick from them. We got ourselves 2 from the left-hand side, 2 from the right-hand side, and we got swords in the center. So we're guaranteed to get these. This gives us some freedom. We have a very long 3-piece there. That's nice. 2-piece and a single piece over here. Now here's what I'm choosing to keep. I'm going to go with the long 3-piece, the 2-piece, and the 2 swords. We'll go ahead and resolve the swords right away. That's nice and easy. So getting 2 swords, we now have a total of 4, which I've got, and I'm just placing below the board. Again, if we get up to 5, so 1 more, we go up to the next tier of points. Now let's go ahead and see how we can use these. Now I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and use this one right here in order to draw up into the sword space and across. So just gain another sword. So now I've got a total of 5 swords. I'm going to use this one right here in order to connect this individual going down and into this line. That's going to help us get Thorin and these back characters closer and closer to Bag End. So we're now moving into round number 3, and as we do, we have to get rid of something that provides glory from this scenario. As I'm attempting to try and get Thorin back to Bag End, we're going to go ahead and let Gandalf's 2 glory points go away. Let's roll the dice and see what we get for options going into round number 3. So over here we got a bread and 2 wizard hats. Well, the 2 wizard hats could be cashed in for 2 bread. So I'm going to go with this first as my choice. This one's going to go. Well, these are the exact same. So we're going to ditch that. And we've got our 3. We're going to go ahead and cash in for the 2 bread right now. All right, so the wizard hats here provide us with 2 bread, and we have a choice. We can place the 2 bread we just gained to cover what Thorin is going to eat to get 4 points when he comes back to Bag End, plus an additional 4 bonus points, or we could put that bread over here and fill in 2 spots for 2 of the dwarves that come back. That's tough. Thorin's a bit greedy. We're deciding to prepare the feast for him instead. All right, let's try a couple things here. We're going to go ahead and use this one first at the very top to branch out from this dwarf here and go down, hitting the wizard hat. Now the question is what to use this wizard hat for. I could use it for a 90-degree angle. I have 1 more left of those, or I could have a single space straight line if I want, or we can start working ourselves towards the 2 hat wizard options. Let's use a single hat and go ahead and mark in the leftmost one of these double ones as we work towards a bigger result. With this final die to resolve, I'm going to use the mirrored version of this to go straight down and over to the left instead of the right. So as you can see, I'm not necessarily connecting to Bag End immediately because I'm trying to delay things as I can potentially get some bread and maybe be able to feed them as they connect in. But I'm trying to get everybody back here in time. Let's move on to the next round. The round counts are way up there in the top left-hand corner. Is moving on to 4. There's nothing to go ahead and remove glory point-wise. Let's roll the dice. All right, let's see what we got coming from the dice. Now, I'll tell you right now that these 2 are the obvious left ones, but over here you can see it's a very tight call on these 2, so I'm getting right in line with them, and the bread is edging out just a bit, so it's going to go over to the right. This is going to be the middle one. These options are too good. I'm going to have to pass up on the bread because I really want these 3 for different connections. I think the T intersection here is going to be perfect for this space right here, allowing a nice connection eventually to the one in the bottom right-hand corner. Next up, let's use this one here to connect this dwarf with this dwarf. And we'll go ahead and place this one here strategically right in this position that's already here. So we're going to connect and also be on top of an overlapping line we've already created, making this a nice intersection point that we can maybe tie in these individuals to in the future. At this point, we're halfway through the game. We got 4 more rounds to get all the dwarves, all 12 dwarves, back to Bag End. We don't have to get Thor in there, but I've tied him in anyway. I've got some food ready for him. But we're going to lose out on his glory points, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead right now and cross that out. We're not going to gain those 2 extra points at the end of the game. Let's roll the dice for round number 5 and see what we have. Here are my options for round 5. So these are exactly the same, so we'll just take one of them and toss the other. Now, out of these 2, I'm more focused on the line, so we'll get rid of the swords for now. We'll keep this as we don't have a choice on that one. I like this a lot. We're going to go ahead with this die right here and be able to draw a line connecting this dwarf to this dwarf. I'm going to use my wizard hat here in order to get just a single straight line, which is going to be perfect in order to connect this dwarf into this connection up here. And when we do, the second we do, it's going to provide us with another wizard hat to use. And I'm going to use it on my other straight line single space, which will be right here. And that is going to be the one we need from here to go straight in. And now we've got an interconnection between all of these. Let's use the final one right here in order to connect the bottom one here up and through the line that exists and a little bit over. That's going to do it. So again, our overall objective is to get all 12 dwarves back to Bag End. So it's looking pretty good. On to round number 6 we go. Let's get these dwarves back. Into round number 6 we go. Let's roll the dice and see what we have to work with. Wow, lots of bread this time. So these 2 obvious left. This one's on the right, and this one's just slightly more on the right. So that is our middle one. So we're going for bread. We're going to go for the double bread instead of the single. That's great. This one is definitely, I think, the one we want because that'll give us a lot of movement coming off the sides. We'll take the 3, get rid of that, and we've got decent things to work with. So we'll prepare some bread here. So we got 2. We'll go ahead and mark them in. We'll go ahead with this one right here, which is going to give us a nice joint we can use to actually place from the bottom of this dwarf to connect into the main line here. Now it gets interesting here because I'm trying to min-max, but again, we only have so many dice rolls and we can't guarantee we're going to get the shapes that we need in order to progress in the way we want to get these guys all connected, but I've got myself to the doorstep. So right now with this really big one, there's a few things we could do. I mean, we could forcefully connect this one through and get all these guys in, which we probably should do, and then we can focus the last 2 rounds on getting these guys connected rather than waste our time trying to get more and more bread. We're not going to be able to feed everybody because I haven't generated enough bread to do it, but we'll get some bonus points there. So let's go ahead and do this 3-1. Now it's going to be a bit of a waste because I'm kind of shooting this way across, or I could flip it, rotate, I should say, not flip it, but rotate it, and maybe even connect these guys in. So the question is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but I already have him fed, so either way it doesn't matter too much. Now what does matter is the bonus point amounts. You'll see they're different for this scenario depending on what position they're in. So right now we have no dwarves in Bag End, but if we were to connect just one side of the game board, we're going to pull in 6 dwarves all at the same time, and that's going to have us checking columns 6 down these rows. So essentially we have food for 2 of them. The other 4, we'd be losing out on bonus points of 3, 4, 1, and 2. That's a lot of points to be lost, and we'd be moving on after that starting at 3 for the next pile of doors that be coming in, just based on how I've connected things anyway. Now the other option I'm actually kind of liking even more is what if we went ahead and used this right here to connect this individual straight through to Bag End, getting the bread on the way in, and then dragging these 6 dwarves in with them. Let's go ahead and do that. It'll be a roundabout way of doing things, but it does provide us that additional resource. So before all the dwarves come piling into Bag End from that connection, we'll go ahead and give ourselves the 1 resource we just gained in bread. The second you make the connection to Bag End, you're going to go ahead and mark off all the dwarves that are connected into that position. So all of these are coming in, and that is going to give you your full count of 6 dwarves, which we're going to mark on the other side. So now at this point, we go ahead and we mark off each of the dwarves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to gain a bonus point circling it for each one that has come in. These will be points we'll add in to the total of points at the very end. And we get points for anything that's filled in bread-wise. So we get these points, and these points, but we do not get these points, or these points. The round track is now going to move over to 7, and we lose glory points if there was any to lose anywhere, but we don't have any to lose, so we just move into 7. Let's roll the dice to see what we get. Hopefully we get more bread, because at this point we're just trying to get additional bonus points for this scenario. Let's see. Of course, we need to connect things still. We got one on the right here. This one's more predominantly on the right, so there's two there. This is on the left, and these two very close, but this one's just a little bit more right. So this one, oh, actually, and we're looking for the left side right now. So technically, yeah, this one is more left. So this one would go over, and this is our middle. Here's what I'm running with for round number 7. We're going to go ahead and cash the 2 wizard hats in. And we'll go ahead and cash it in for this one here and this one here, which gives us a 2-space solid straight line. Now, we did have one that was on its way, but you can't split up those double results. We'll use that single straight line right here to connect this dwarf right into bag end, straight through the bread, so we gain 1 bread resource, as well as bringing all these dwarves in, all 6 of them, plus Thorin. So the bottom right-hand corner of Thorin, and all the doors over here have been marked with an X, and we're also going to X them off over here as well. We also take the bread resource. We'll X that in first, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus Thorin coming in, and we gain the points across the board for all of these, which is awesome. We gain 1 from here, but we do not get these ones. We do get this, however, because we had Thorins made very early in the game. Now at this point, the adventure ends right away because all the dwarves have been connected to bag end, but it's worth mentioning something for your strategy going forward. There's a section here in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to see some icons with a question mark and a white die, basically meaning that once you've got your dice, you can select to not use what's on the face of the die and just get rid of it, discarding it, and choosing from something in here. So if you wanted to bump up how much bread you were making, you wanted an additional sword, maybe you want another wizard icon, you could ditch a die to do that. You'd mark it with an X because you can't take advantage of that same thing the next time. So you can do this 4 times, and then eventually there'll be nothing there for you to take from, and every scenario will have different options there for you. So now we move into endgame scoring. We simply take a look at the top row first, and we're going to add up all the points that are circled across that row, including Thorin, but nothing for Gandalf. So we got 27 points there. Next up, this row with the bread. So we have 1, this is 3, 6, 9, and then finally 4 on top. That's going to be 13. Now let's look at the swords and the glory points. For swords, we were at 5, and 5's inside the range of 5 to 9, so that's 10 points. Nothing for glory points, so that's a total of 10. Now on top of the points we're adding up here, we're also giving ourselves an additional 20 points because we completed the scenario before the round limit. So in the end, I scored a total of 70 points. So that gives me the victory and the point total for part number 1, and we would move on to the next part from here. Once you get to the end of the 8th part, you're going to add up all the total scores to give yourself a campaign score. Now remember that part number 1 is very much a tutorial onboarding experience. As you go further into the game, into part number 2, things really start to open up, and you have some really interesting maps to go through and differences in terms of gameplay as you go through each and every one of these unique parts in the story. And that, my friends, wraps up my game overview and gameplay video for The Hobbit There and Back Again. I really hope this helps you get a great idea as to whether or not this is a game for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your comments and thoughts down below. Would love to hear from the solo community on this one. And as always, keep on rolling solo.